The orcs of Tamriel were never meant to fit in. Called the Orsimer, meaning pariah folk, they were once elves before being changed by the Daedric prince Malakath. That alone marked them forever. While other elves enjoy long traditions and powerful kingdoms, the orcs are often forced to live on the edge of civilization. Even when they build, even when they prove their strength, they are rarely accepted. Their history is full of scars that never healed, and the name orc still brings out fear or hatred in much of the world. From the frozen holds of Skyrim to the imperial heartlands of Cyrodiil, their place has always been a hard one, and it started a long time ago. The curse that made them who they are is not just a story. It was real, and it changed everything. Their god was Trinimac, one of the strongest warrior spirits in the old elven pantheon. But Trinimac stood against the Daedric prince Boethia and lost. Boethia consumed him, and from that defeat came Malakath. The elves who worshipped Trinimac were twisted too. They became the Orsimer. This wasn't a change they chose. It was forced on them, and the other elves never let them forget it. Even their name marked them as outcasts. The word Orsimer itself is loaded with shame, a reminder that they used to be something else, something purer in the eyes of the other Mer. And from that moment on, they were treated like they didn't belong. But the orcs adapted. They didn't vanish or beg for a place. They fought, they endured, and they built their own culture, one centered on strength, honor, and survival. This way of life became known as the Code of Malakath. It teaches that strength earns respect, that vengeance is sacred, and that loyalty to your stronghold matters more than anything else. Orc society became centered around the stronghold, with a chief at the top who had to be strong enough to lead and defend his people. This wasn't just tradition, it was survival. The world outside never gave the orcs peace. The other races saw them as beasts. The Empire used them as soldiers, but rarely gave them land. The Nords called them monsters and pushed them into the mountains. The Dunmer enslaved them. Even in places where the orcs lived for generations, they were still seen as less. They were often blamed for crimes they didn't commit or treated like brutes before they even spoke a word. Their homes were burned more than once. Orsinium, their great city, was destroyed and rebuilt multiple times. No other race in Tamriel has had to rebuild their homeland so many times after being wiped out by neighbors. The first Orsinium rose in the Hrothgarian mountains, and the orcs worked hard to make it a real kingdom. They forged steel, kept order, and asked for recognition. But their neighbors, mostly Bretons and Redguards, saw a growing threat. Together, they marched on Orsinium and burned it down. The orcs tried again centuries later. They rebuilt Orsinium, gained favor with the Empire, and even became part of the Daggerfall Covenant. But it didn't last. When the alliances broke apart, so did the city. That cycle of struggle never really ended. The orcs keep building. The world keeps knocking it down. And yet the orcs don't stop. This constant push and pull has made them stronger in many ways. They are some of the best blacksmiths in the world. Their armor and weapons are known across Tamriel. Their warriors are respected, even feared. But respect isn't the same as acceptance. Even now, orcs are often treated as second-class citizens. In cities, they're hired as guards or mercenaries, but few rise to real power. In strongholds, they cling to their traditions, because they know the outside world doesn't welcome them. Even when they serve in armies, fight in wars, or protect the weak, their loyalty is often questioned. Their faith is mocked. Their culture is misunderstood. And their legacy is tied not to glory or wisdom, but to violence and exile. Despite all this, the orcs are still here. They haven't vanished. They haven't given up. They raise their children with pride, teach them the code, and keep the stories of Malakath alive. They keep trying to make their place in a world that never seems to want them. This is the real story of the Orsimer, not just warriors or savages, but a people shaped by betrayal, tested by time, and still standing. They are not a fallen race. They are a surviving one. The Orsimer were not born as orcs. Long ago, they were elves, part of the Aldmer, the ancient ancestors of the Mer. They followed Trinimac, one of the most powerful warrior gods among the elven pantheon. Trinimac stood for honor, strength, and truth. He was the shield of the Aldmer, and the voice that spoke against the lies and chaos of the Daedra. His followers were noble and disciplined. They believed in a strong and ordered life, standing firm against the influence of trickster gods like Boethia. But it all changed in a moment that would shape their destiny forever. Trinimac confronted Boethia to stop the spread of her teachings, which challenged the old ways. What happened next is debated, but the result is always the same. Boethia consumed Trinimac, either by devouring him completely or by corrupting his form. In that act, Trinimac was turned into Malakath, a god of outcasts, of anger, and of endurance. His transformation wasn't just spiritual. It broke his body and voice and reshaped his purpose. The elves who followed him were also changed. Their skin turned green, their tusks grew. Their bodies became tougher, rougher, built for pain and survival. They were no longer part of the Aldmer. They were now the Orsimer, the pariah folk. From that moment, they were cut off. Other elves saw them as deformed, cursed, no longer worthy of elven heritage. The high elves in Somerset viewed them as fallen. The Chimers saw them as shameful. Even those who respected their strength kept them at a distance. They were never allowed back into the halls of their former kin. They had no homeland, no empire, no allies. The world pushed them away. Their god was now a Daedra, and their faces were a mark of exile. Even though they held on to their values, discipline, loyalty, strength, they were now treated as beasts. This was the beginning of their endless struggle. The Orsimer never forgot who they were. Even after being cast out, they built strongholds in the mountains. Isolated and harsh, these places became their homes. In these stone halls, they lived by the code of Malakath, a way of life rooted in personal strength, in proving your worth, and in respecting those stronger than you. Life in a stronghold was not easy. Every day was a test. You had to fight for your place. Chiefs ruled by power. Disputes were settled by strength or skill. But it gave them order. It gave them purpose. And most of all, it gave them pride. Still, that pride didn't shield them from the rest of Tamriel. Wherever the Orsimer went, they faced suspicion. Humans called them monsters. Elves called them failures. Even those who met peaceful orcs couldn't forget the stories. The Orsimer knew how the world saw them, and they carried that weight. It shaped their history. It shaped their culture. And it all began with a single betrayal. Boethia didn't just change Trinimac, she erased the place his people once held in the world. She turned champions into outcasts, warriors into wanderers, and Tamriel never let them forget it. The name Orsimer means pariah folk. It's not just a title. It's a curse that has followed them through every era. Not because of anything they did, but because of what was done to them. This is how their story began, and this is why the Orsimer have always had to fight for a place they can call their own. Orcs, or Orsimer, have long lived under the shadow of rejection across Tamriel, pushed aside by both elves and men. Their story is one of constant struggle to claim space in a world that refuses to fully accept them. The High Elves, known as the Altmer, view the Orcs as corrupted Mer, fallen from the pure lineage of the Aldmer. This perception marks the Orcs as impure and dishonored in the eyes of the Elves. The Altmer's disdain is not just casual dislike, but a deep-seated cultural judgment rooted in the ancient betrayal of Trinimac and the transformation that followed. For the Altmer, the Orsimer represent a deviation from the ideal elf, a reminder of what they consider failure and weakness. This has led to a long history of exclusion from elven lands and political influence. Even the Chimer and Dunmer, who themselves have a complex relationship with the Orcs, keep them at arm's length, rarely granting them full acceptance. On the other side, humans hold their own views about Orcs, shaped largely by fear and stereotype. Humans often see Orcs as violent brutes, warriors who rely on sheer strength and aggression instead of cunning or diplomacy. These views paint the Orsimer as threats, dangers lurking beyond the borders of civilized lands. This stereotype overlooks the deep honor codes and complex societies within Orc culture, but it has nevertheless influenced human attitudes for centuries. Human kingdoms rarely welcome Orc settlements openly, often pushing them into the margins or harsh lands where they can be controlled or ignored. The Empire, while sometimes offering grudging tolerance, never truly embraces the Orcs. Instead, it accepts them mainly when they serve a purpose. Orcs are often recruited as soldiers, prized for their strength and endurance in battle. Their skill in smithing is also highly valued, leading to their employment in forging weapons and armor. This acceptance is conditional and practical, rather than based on respect or genuine inclusion. When Orcs stop serving these roles or attempt to integrate fully into society, they face suspicion and exclusion. No major province in Tamriel openly welcomes the Orcs. Even in places where they live peacefully, such as their strongholds, they remain outsiders. Their communities are often isolated, surrounded by wary neighbors. Trust is rare, and prejudice is constant. Orcs are forced to defend their honor continually against assumptions of savagery and danger. This ongoing rejection has shaped Orc society into one that values resilience and self-reliance. Their culture emphasizes strength, loyalty, and the will to survive in a hostile world. The Orcs build their lives within their strongholds, away from the cities and courts where they are unwelcome. These strongholds are not just places to live, but symbols of their independence and their refusal to be erased. Despite their skills, their traditions, and their history, Orcs remain caught in a cycle of mistrust and exclusion. Elves and men alike treat them as less than fully part of the world's story. The reasons are old and complicated, tied to divine betrayals and cultural prejudices that refuse to fade. This persistent alienation defines much of the Orc experience in Tamriel, making it clear that no matter where they go, they must fight not only for survival, but for respect and recognition they rarely receive. This is the reality of being an Orc in Tamriel, strong, proud, and enduring, yet always on the outside looking in. Orsinium is the Orc homeland, located in the harsh Rothgarian mountains. It stands as a symbol of the Orsimer's desire for a place to call their own, a real home where they can live by their own rules and traditions. The city was founded by Orcs, who were tired of being treated as outsiders and sought to establish a stronghold where their people could thrive. Orsinium has been built and destroyed more times than any other city in Tamriel. Its history is marked by a repeated cycle of hope and devastation. The Orcs worked hard to build a peaceful society in Orsinium, developing their culture, crafting weapons, and forging alliances when possible. However, their efforts were met with hostility by neighboring human kingdoms, especially the Bretons and Redguards. These kingdoms saw Orsinium not as a legitimate nation, but as a threat to their power and stability. This fear and prejudice led to repeated attacks on Orsinium, each time resulting in destruction and exile for the Orcs. The city has been sacked and burned many times, often by alliances formed specifically to crush Orc ambitions. Despite this, the Orcs never gave up. Each time Orsinium was destroyed, the Orcs would return, rebuild, and try again. Their persistence shows a deep will to survive and hold on to their identity. But every rebuilding effort met the same end: betrayal, violence, and ruin. These cycles have left a lasting scar on the Orc people. The story of Orsinium is not just about a city, it is about the struggle of the Orcs to be accepted and to live in peace. Their homeland represents both their strength and the constant opposition they face from the world around them. Even today, Orsinium remains a reminder of the challenges Orcs face in Tamriel. Despite their attempts to create a stable society, many see Orsinium as a symbol of unrest and danger, rather than a place of culture and history. The repeated destruction of their home reflects the broader rejection Orcs experience everywhere they go. Orsinium's story is a testament to the Orcs' resilience, but it also highlights the harsh realities of their place in Tamriel. It is a land where their dreams are crushed repeatedly, where their efforts to belong end in violence, and where their right to exist is constantly questioned. This endless cycle of building and burning defines much of what it means to be an orc in Tamriel. Their homeland is never safe, their people never fully accepted, and their future always uncertain. Orcs in Tamriel face hardship not just from history, but in everyday life across the provinces. In Skyrim, orc strongholds still exist, but they are isolated and separated from the wider society. The Nords often view orcs as invaders or threats to their land, keeping them at arm's length. Orcs live mostly in mountain fortresses, where they maintain their culture but rarely integrate with the Nordic population. Their presence is tolerated only because of their skills as warriors and blacksmiths, not because they are accepted as equals. Moving south to Cyrodiil, the heart of the Empire, orcs live in the Imperial City and other places, but their roles remain limited. Many orcs work as mercenaries or smiths, trades that the Empire values but that do not grant them full respect or status. The Empire accepts orcs only when it suits its needs, and they often face discrimination despite their contributions. Orcs in Cyrodiil have few political rights and are seen more as useful tools than as full citizens. In Hammerfell and High Rock, orcs have a long history of warfare with the Redguards and Bretons. These conflicts have left deep scars on relationships, and even after peace treaties were made, orcs are still seen as outsiders. In Hammerfell, orcs are often relegated to the outskirts of society, where they are tolerated but rarely welcome. Their attempts to settle peacefully are met with suspicion, and their settlements face hostility from neighboring groups. High Rock shows similar attitudes, with orcs considered rough and uncivilized by many Bretons. Though orcs have skills in battle and crafting, they struggle to gain acceptance. In Morrowind, orcs are treated harshly under Dunmer culture. They are often viewed as little better than slaves, and are forced into low-status roles. The Dunmer mistrust orcs deeply, stemming from historical conflicts and cultural differences. Orcs live in enclaves but remain outsiders in Morrowind society, their rights limited and their contributions undervalued. In the provinces of Black Marsh and Elsfire, orcs are barely mentioned in records, suggesting little presence or acceptance. These regions do not have significant orc populations, and if orcs do live there, they are likely marginalized or pushed out. The lack of mention reflects the wider pattern of exclusion that orcs face across Tamriel. This scattered and often hostile reception leaves orcs with few places to call home. Their communities exist but are isolated and under constant pressure from the majority populations around them. Orcs must rely on their strength and traditions to survive in environments where they are not truly welcome. Their resilience keeps their culture alive despite these challenges. Across all provinces, orcs are rarely given equal standing. Whether in the cold mountains of Skyrim or the political centers of Cyrodiil, orcs remain outsiders. Their contributions as warriors, smiths, and soldiers are recognized only to a point, beyond which prejudice limits their opportunities. This lack of acceptance shapes the daily lives of orcs and influences how they see themselves. They live with the knowledge that most of Tamriel views them as threats or lesser beings. This reality forces orcs to build tight-knit communities that protect their traditions but also isolate them further. The orc struggle is not just historical but ongoing, lived every day in towns, cities, and strongholds. It affects their social status, economic chances, and personal relationships. Despite this, orc culture remains strong, proud of its heritage and determined to survive. The orcs' place in Tamriel is one of endurance in the face of widespread distrust. They hold to their identity even when the world around them refuses to accept it fully. The orcs' religious beliefs are unlike those of most other races in Tamriel, marked by division and a focus on suffering that shapes their culture deeply. At the center of their faith lies the figure of Malakath, a Daedric prince who emerged after the transformation of Trinimac. This change caused a split among the orcs between those who still honor Trinimac and those who worship Malakath. This divide is significant because it shows how the orcs have never been fully united, even in their most personal beliefs. Followers of Trinimac hold on to the memory of the noble warrior god who once led their ancestors, seeing him as a symbol of honor and strength before his fall. They view Malakath with suspicion or outright rejection, feeling that he represents a darker path taken after a great betrayal. On the other hand, many orcs accept Malakath as their patron, embracing the harsh lessons his worship teaches. Malakath urges his followers to accept suffering and hardship as part of their destiny, shaping a culture that values endurance and resilience. This focus on pain and struggle is unusual compared to other races that worship gods of light, order, or prosperity. It sets the orcs apart and adds to their isolation because their faith does not align with the more hopeful or optimistic religions around them. The honor code tied to Malakath's worship is strict and demanding. Orcs live by rules that emphasize loyalty to clan, courage in battle, and respect for strength and resilience. This code governs many aspects of orc life, from warfare to daily interactions, shaping their identity in ways outsiders often misunderstand. To many other races, orcish honor seems brutal or savage. Their rituals and customs are sometimes mocked or dismissed as primitive. This misunderstanding contributes to the prejudice orcs face and makes it harder for them to find acceptance. The religious split within orc society adds complexity to their identity. It prevents a simple, unified culture and instead creates internal tensions that mirror the external challenges they face. Some orc clans are strongly Malakathian, while others keep to the older worship of Trinimac. This division can lead to disagreements or lack of cooperation, making orc communities less cohesive than they might otherwise be. Despite this, the shared experiences of hardship and the bonds of clan loyalty hold orcs together. Their religion, with all its difficulties, reinforces their resilience and pride. The worship of Malakath especially encourages them to see suffering not just as something to endure, but as a path to strength and honor. This perspective is rare in Tamriel and marks the orcs as different in fundamental ways. Their faith is deeply personal and tied to their history of exile and rejection. It is a source of both comfort and challenge, helping them survive in a world that often rejects them. Orc religion shows their different place in Tamriel's world. Unlike others, orcs worship a god of vengeance and strength. It reflects how they survive hardship, but still remain outsiders, never fully part of the world around them. In the end, the split between those who follow Malakath and those who remember Trinimac shows how orcs aren't all the same. Orcs are a people shaped by struggle and belief, each with their own pride. Their religion is a key part of what makes them who they are, influencing how they live, fight, and connect with each other. The orcs' honor code and religious beliefs stand as a testament to their resilience in a world that often misunderstands or rejects them, making their story one of endurance and quiet strength rooted in faith and tradition. Orcs in Tamriel have a complicated relationship with the great empires that rule much of the continent. For centuries, they have been used by these powers, especially the Empire, as soldiers and craftsmen, yet they never gained the respect they deserve. The Imperial Legion often recruits orcs for their strength, toughness, and skill in battle. Orc warriors serve in the Legion's ranks, fighting in dangerous campaigns and proving themselves on countless battlefields. Even when orcs fight bravely, they don't often get real respect. Once their usefulness fades or political winds shift, orcs can be sidelined, forgotten, or even blamed for problems they had no part in. Beyond the battlefield, orcs are renowned as smiths and craftsmen. Their strongholds, like the famed stronghold of Largashbur, are centers of metalwork and weapons production. Orcish smiths create some of the finest armor and weapons in Tamriel, prized by warriors of all races. Orc smiths make weapons that keep many armies ready for war. Yet, even as they produce tools of war that keep empires safe and armies strong, orcs remain outsiders in these societies. In times of crisis, orc warriors are called upon to defend cities, fight invaders, and enforce laws. Many orcs fight not just for pay, but to prove their worth. Still, their efforts rarely translate into lasting trust or equal treatment. After wars end or enemies are defeated, orcs face discrimination and marginalization once more. Political leaders might use orc troops to bolster their armies, but social barriers and prejudice remain firmly in place. Even in the imperial city, orc citizens struggle for recognition, their voices drowned out by prejudice and fear. The orcs' situation in the empire shows a cycle of use and neglect. They prove their worth repeatedly but are met with suspicion and exclusion. This pattern extends beyond the empire to other powers in Tamriel. Kings and lords employ orc mercenaries or hire orc smiths when it suits them, yet few offer lasting respect or inclusion. Orcs often find themselves pawns in larger political games, their strength exploited, but their needs ignored. This lack of respect affects orc culture and morale. Many orcs carry a quiet bitterness toward the societies that rely on their service but keep them at arm's length. Their pride in their heritage and skills is tempered by the knowledge that outsiders rarely see them as equals. This dynamic also shapes orc communities internally. Strongholds emphasize clan loyalty and self-reliance because trust in the wider world is limited. Orcs build their own lives and support networks, knowing that outside acceptance may never come. Despite this, orcs continue to serve and craft, driven by tradition, necessity, and a desire to prove themselves. Though their work keeps many safe, orcs rarely get the respect they deserve. In the end, orcs stand as a people caught between usefulness and rejection. They are valued for their power and skill, but denied the honor and equality that should follow. Their story is one of strength met with suspicion, loyalty met with neglect, and survival in a world that rarely offers them full acceptance. This ongoing struggle shapes the orc experience across Tamriel, defining their place in history and in the present. Orcs have lived in a world that often treats them as outsiders, as threats, or as burdens. From the moment of their creation, through the curse of Boethia, their existence has been marked by conflict and hardship. Wherever orcs go in Tamriel, they face deep-rooted prejudice and hostility. Their strength and fierce loyalty sometimes earn grudging respect, but more often they encounter suspicion and hatred. This rejection comes not only from other races, but also from empires and kingdoms that rely on them yet never fully accept them. The orcs' history is filled with battles fought not just against external enemies, but against the very societies that deny them equality. Orc culture values honor, strength, and community. Yet these values are rarely recognized beyond their own strongholds. The orcs respond to their rejection with resilience. Orcs rebuild their strongholds and stick to old ways. Their clans remain tight-knit, and their respect for Malakath and their ancestors sustains them through difficult times. Even when isolated or persecuted, they continue to prove their worth on battlefields, and in the forge, crafting weapons and armor that defend empires that do not welcome them. The orcs do not disappear or fade away despite the many forces working against them. Instead, they adapt, endure, and maintain their identity in a world that often refuses to acknowledge it. This endurance shapes the orc story into one about more than just hatred and exclusion. It is a story of survival against odds, of pride kept alive through struggle. Their loyalty to their people and their values is unbroken, even when it costs them. The orcs' journey across Tamriel is one of hardship and honor, rejection and resilience. While it is clear that it often sucks to be an orc in Tamriel, that very struggle is what forges them into one of the strongest, most loyal, and most enduring peoples of all the Elder Scrolls. Orcs don't get a place in Tamriel handed to them. They earn it every time they fight, build, or survive. In the end, what makes the orcs strong isn't just muscle. It's that they never let the world break who they are.